The Herero and Nama genocide, also known as the Namibian genocide, was a campaign of ethnic extermination and collective punishment waged against the Herero and Nama peoples in German Southwest Africa, now Namibia, by the German Empire. It was the first genocide of the 20th century, occurring between 1904 and 1908. In the scorched deserts of what is now Namibia, a dark chapter of human history unfolded, one that still resonates with profound grief and anger. The genocide of the Herero and Nama peoples by the German Empire in its colony of German Southwest Africa is one of the most brutal and systematic genocides of the 20th century, a story of colonial cruelty, exploitation, and the deliberate extermination of indigenous peoples. To understand the full scope of this genocide, we must first look at the land's history. The San and Kuko peoples were the original inhabitants of the region, living in relative harmony with the land for thousands of years. However, in the mid-18th century, the Herero people, skilled pastoralists from the east, migrated into the area, bringing with them advanced cattle herding practices. Their dominance in the fertile highlands pushed the indigenous San and Kuko people to more arid regions. This shift in power set the stage for future conflict. As European powers scrambled for control of Africa in the late 19th century, Germany began to establish a colonial presence in the region. Adolf Luderitz, a German merchant, acquired land in 1883 through a fraudulent deal with local chiefs, initiating German expansion into the area. At first, Herero chief Samuel Maharero sought an alliance with the Germans, hoping to protect his people from rival tribes. But these alliances turned sour as the Germans began seizing land and resources. By 1890, the Herero had been forced into signing treaties that ceded vast portions of their land to German settlers, initiating a pattern of exploitation that would lead to open rebellion. The rising tensions came to a head in January 1904, when the Herero, led by Chief Samuel Maharero, revolted against the German colonial government. The Nama, a neighboring people similarly oppressed by German policies, joined the Herero in their uprising, led by Hendrik Witbooi. Both groups had endured brutal exploitation, forced labor, land dispossession, and increasing violence at the hands of the Germans, and they could no longer tolerate it. The German response was swift and merciless. General Lothar von Trotha, a commander known for his brutal tactics, was sent to crush the rebellion. Von Trotha had earned a reputation for cruelty in China and was tasked with not merely defeating the Herero and Nama, but annihilating them entirely. His methods were deliberately designed to destroy these people, not only physically, but culturally and psychologically. At the Battle of Waterberg in August 1904, von Trotha's forces decisively defeated the Herero, forcing them into the inhospitable expanse of the Omaheki Desert. The Germans followed their retreating enemy, ensuring that no water or food could be found by poisoning wells and setting up roadblocks to prevent any attempt to return home. Many Herero died from dehydration, starvation, and exhaustion. Von Trotha's infamous extermination order, issued in October 1904, left no room for mercy. He declared that any Herero found within German territory, with or without arms, would be shot. Women and children, whom he deemed impure, were not spared. The genocidal nature of this campaign was clear, and its consequences were horrific. The Herero population, once numbering around 80,000, was reduced to just 15,000 by 1907. The Nama too suffered immensely, with their population similarly decimated. The genocide did not only claim lives through physical violence and starvation. The German military's treatment of women and children was marked by sexual violence and exploitation. Women, both Herero and Nama, were subjected to sexual abuse by German soldiers and officers. Rape was used as a tool of humiliation, terror, and domination, breaking the will of the survivors. In many cases, women were taken as slaves and used for domestic labor and sexual servitude. They were stripped of their dignity and reduced to mere objects of German colonial control. German soldiers, empowered by their perceived racial superiority, saw the women as trophies, symbols of their dominance over the Herero and Nama people. This sexual exploitation was part of a broader pattern of violence aimed at dehumanizing the indigenous population and further consolidating colonial power. As the genocide unfolded, survivors were not allowed to escape their torment. After fleeing into the desert or being captured, they were sent to concentration camps, where they endured grueling forced labor, medical experimentation, and brutal treatment. Camps such as Shark Island became notorious for their horrific conditions, with thousands of Herero and Nama men, women, and children dying from exhaustion, disease, malnutrition, and the cruelty of their captors. At Shark Island, the prisoners were subjected to forced labor under the hot sun with insufficient food or water. Their bodies pushed to the brink of collapse. German soldiers regularly beat the inmates, and many were subjected to humiliating and violent public executions. In addition to the forced labor, the German authorities conducted horrific medical experiments on the prisoners. German doctors, including Dr. Bofinger, subjected Herero and Nama individuals to painful and deadly experiments, injecting them with harmful substances like arsenic and opium to study their effects on the human body. These experiments often resulted in severe injury or death, and the bodies of those who perished were dissected for scientific study. The skulls of the dead were collected and sent to Germany, where they were used for racist anthropological research to reinforce theories of Aryan racial superiority. The Germans went further still in their efforts to erase the Herero and Nama peoples from existence. After the brutal military campaign and the ravaging effects of the concentration camps, surviving Herero and Nama populations were stripped of their land, cattle, and cultural identity. They were forced to wear metal discs around their necks, marking them as subjugated people, and their traditional ways of life were systematically dismantled. German authorities sought not only to exterminate the Herero and Nama physically, but also to erase their social and cultural existence. These acts of cultural genocide were aimed at breaking the spirit of the survivors and ensuring their subjugation for generations to come. Despite the scale of the atrocities, the genocide remained largely unrecognized for many years. It wasn't until 1985 that the UN's Whitaker Report acknowledged the extermination attempt. Germany, however, only made a formal apology in 2004, though it stopped short of offering reparations. In 2015, Germany recognized the events as genocide, but it continued to resist providing reparations to the descendants of the victims. In 2021, an agreement was reached where Germany promised €1.1 billion for development projects in affected communities over the next 30 years, but it stopped short of offering full reparations or returning the stolen land. The genocide of the Herero and Nama remains a painful and often overlooked chapter of colonial history. The survivors and their descendants continue to fight for justice, for recognition, and for reparations. The atrocities committed by the German Empire in Namibia are not just a historical wound. They are a living scar that continues to shape the legacy of colonialism, with the echoes of this brutality reverberating throughout the region. The Herero and Nama genocide stands as a solemn reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the necessity of confronting the colonial past in order to build a just and accountable future. Today, the Herero and Nama people continue to honor their ancestors, celebrating their resilience through cultural practices and memorials. Their story is a somber reminder of colonialism's dark legacy and the resilience of those who survived. We must remember these events not only to honor the victims, but to educate ourselves on the consequences of unchecked colonialism and racial ideology. If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and share. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below.